The truth is there's no finish line where you're going to feel successful. If you don't feel successful today, you're not going to feel it in a year. You're not going to feel it if you get an award, and you're not going to feel it if you make a certain amount of money. If you don't feel it today, you'll never feel it.
Hey everybody, Mark Arinsberg here with the Purenow Show. This is episode number 26. My guest today is Maxx Burman. Max is the co-founder of KitBash3D, a company named the top 10 most innovative companies in video gaming. But before he started this, he spent over a decade in the film and game industry as an art director and matte painter, working on such films as Godzilla and Iron Man 3. Here we go. Well, let's talk about that because there's a lot of young people starting out now in the VFX world. You see on Instagram a lot of ads for people teaching matte painting. It's still a very viable industry, but things have changed in the whole idea of having kind of a brick and mortar studio versus having just a pure online presence. How did the timing of you starting your studio and, to the point of you closing your doors, what was that chain of events of getting all these amazing jobs in and then having to shut the whole thing down?
Yeah, I think the big thing was that I wasn't well versed in business at that time. And, I thought that the main part of owning a studio was just doing great work. And that's important, but that's table stakes when you're running a studio. You have to do great work to keep the doors open. But there's so much more to it. And it was a great lesson of all the things I didn't know that I didn't know. It really showed how much I had to learn about business and how running a studio is not about going and doing art every day. I learned that these industries work in very different ways. The whole game in commercials is agencies. And the agencies have the studios that they work with day in and day out. And if you want to get in, you're going to do a lot of favors before you start to get a consistent flow of jobs. You're not going to make a lot of profit in the beginning, and you're gonna earn your keep. And that's something that requires, a lot more runway and ramp up in order to embed yourself in. Game cinematics and TV series are a similar way. It's hard to get established and build those relationships. So, I think we did great work, but at the end of the day, it wasn't about whether or not we could deliver great work. It was about how well were we actually able to build the connections with the clients that we needed and run the business in a profitable way. And visual effects in general, very slim margins, which makes it even more dangerous.
So what did you learn from that? How did you take this information that you gleaned from that experience and go to the next level of your professional career?
Yeah, when we closed the studio doors, I had a couple offers on the table of going and joining as an art director at a few different studios, which was great. It was definitely a tough time and a sad time, but the big thing was making sure that everyone at our studio had a job waiting for them, that everyone landed safely at a studio that they were happy at, and anyone who wanted to come with me could. And I ended up working at a studio called Elastic as the art director over there. And that time, I really spent the 6 months after we closed our doors just studying business, trying to figure out what happened really, and realizing hey, this is something I have to learn. So I read every book, took every class that I could. Luckily, there's a lot of amazing universities that put all their business classes online for free, and I just binged them and just really studied it to really understand it and say, this is the new craft that I have to learn and I have to dedicate myself to it the same way I've dedicated myself to matte painting or art directing for the last decade.
Well, that's really valuable information because typically speaking, the creative individual, the artist, is really lacking in that professional side, the business knowledge, in order to maintain a career. There's so much responsibility with knowing how to not just get business, keep business, manage clients, keep the monetary flow going. There's a lot of money going out as much as there is coming in. What were some of the key points that you learned about that you were able to leverage later on and have some success going forward?
I think one of the big things I learned was as creative people, we overvalue the product. I think that's a big one. A creative person will say that a great product is 80% of the battle. Someone in the marketing world might say that it's 20% of the battle. So there's a pretty big mismatch there. And by overvaluing the creative, we're undervaluing everything else that's around it. An example I like to use is the Livestrong bracelets, Lance Armstrong bracelets. Was that a great product? I don't know, not particularly. It was kind of a rubber band on your wrist. They sold millions of them, because of the branding, the messaging, what it meant, the way they were able to market it. And so you look at that and you say, hey, a not great product can be wildly successful, and a great product can be not successful at all. And so I think that was a big lesson for me in something that's I'm so passionate about is the art, the creative, the product we create, and starting to realize, hey, that might not be the whole equation here. There's a whole lot of other things that need to come together for that to be successful.
So now you have this whole new business model that you're working with. It's working well. How is new technology going to impact what you're doing? Are you introducing things as they come along? What is your place? What is your role in continuing to develop what you have going on now?
Where we see our role, I think, is I look at the internet, and the internet is only possible because anyone can build a website and we can connect them all together. And that's what made the internet hit a critical mass. And we look at the same thing with the 3D internet or the metaverse or the digital twin or whatever anyone wants to call it. And we really do believe that, hey, this is possible, but it's not inevitable. And for us to make that happen, anyone needs to be able to create a 3D experience without any prior knowledge and share it with a friend. And we need to be able to connect those things together. And so what our role in that, trying to push that ball forward, is how do we solve the problem of the blank page? How do we give people all of the building blocks they need to be able to create those 3D experiences easily? And that has a whole host of technical challenges that we have to solve. We're really focused on one part of this challenge. So we're always developing new tools. We're always trying to push the boundaries of this. We're always fighting for interoperability and software agnosticism, which means that whatever we build has to work everywhere for everyone. So when someone changes something, we have to be the first one to implement. And that's really, for us, how technology is constantly moving us forward.
And do you think this whole thing is going to become essentially open source, where we're all sharing, and anybody who's interested can create a professional life for themselves and sustain themselves? Is this kind of where things are going, that it's just going to be kind of a free-for-all? And how does that look from a customer side or a client side that's looking for talent? It seems like it's getting bigger and bigger, but are there more opportunities for people to leverage this kind of aptitude and experience to be able to make a living? How's that going to play out, do you see?
I mean, I believe if the internet does do this and become a 3D space, we're going to see more needs for this skill set between art and technology than we've ever seen before. You think of how many graphic designers there were before the web and how many there are afterwards, and how much more work there is for graphic design afterwards. You can imagine the same sort of thing for 3D, for concept art, for art direction, for the skill set that is inherently built into visual effects in video games. It's just now maybe that's not just a form of entertainment. Maybe that's a form of e-commerce. Maybe that's a form of social media. I think there's a lot of other applications that can be brought into this 3D space.
What do you think some of the biggest challenges are now, and that you foresee going forward, that you can be part of the solution in either streamlining or creating more opportunity for others to be involved with it?
Yeah, I mean, the big challenge we're trying to solve is really the learning curve for 3D is a big part of it. There's one thing of the learning curve is brought down, that's kind of enabling people to do this stuff. But also you need to want to do this stuff. That's where the inspire comes in. How do we get people interested in making this stuff? And then how do we make it just fun to actually do? How do we remove the things that creative people don't enjoy doing so that they can focus on the stuff they do enjoy doing? And so those are kind of the main challenges, and kind of right next to that is interoperability. It's about being able to build something once and use it over and over and over again. Similar to SpaceX of, we're not gonna get to Mars if you can't reuse a rocket. Well, we're not gonna get to the metaverse if you can't reuse an asset.
So are we getting smarter in that way, whereby we can create these assets, leverage them more over longer periods of time, get mileage out of them, so to speak, and not keep reinventing the wheel?
KitBash is. In terms of libraries out there, I can't speak for anyone else's library, but us, we can update 10,000 assets in 1 hour and have all of them change to a whole new format, which is crazy. That's something that never existed before, which means, hey, if a new platform comes up, if AR takes off and ends up being where everyone's spending their time in AR, well, you can hit a button and have everything we've ever built now AR ready. And I think that's the kind of manipulation that we need to be able to do with the work we're creating in order to future-proof it and to make sure that when we build something today, in 5 years, we can still use it.
This is becoming at some point a passé subject, but towards being a matte painter and VFX artist, can you tell me kind of where that all started, how you first got the inclination that this was something you wanted to pursue? Sure,
yeah. I think a lot of people in this industry have that movie or that game that kind of pushed them over the edge for it. For me, it was The Matrix. I saw The Matrix when I was a kid and just thought, oh my God, what is this? This is what I want to do. I want to make whatever worlds they're making, and then started to learn like, oh, this is CGI and visual effects, and started to dive more and more into that world. And throughout my teenage years, I was playing on Photoshop and doing design challenges online in different forums and kind of competing in design battles. And then my parents found the school Gnomon, and that just opened my eyes even more of like, there's a lot of other people who are really interested in this stuff too. So I started taking Gnomon classes at night and interning at different studios during the day, and kind of got my first job and never looked back. You apprenticed with Sid Dutton. So how did you end up with the opportunity to work with Sid, one of the godfathers of matte painting? How did that opportunity present itself, and how did you take that experience and move your career forward? Yeah, I got really lucky with that. When I was 18, college wasn't for me. I knew that I didn't want to go to a 4-year school. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in visual effects. So instead, I went down the phone book at the time and looked up every visual effects studio in LA. And I called every single studio and just offered to work for free. And the funny part about that is out of 200 studios, I'm going in alphabetical order, Zoic with a Z was the only one who said yes. It's the last number in the phone book. But they said yes, and they gave me an internship. And I started interning there as much as I could get on a computer and paint. There weren't a lot of matte painters there, and that was something I was really interested in. So I got a lot of opportunity to work on shows during my internship and got hired on full-time pretty soon. And then while I was there, I was kind of the only matte painter there, and all of a sudden Sid Dutton joins the studio as the matte painting supervisor to run the matte painting department there. And I think there was a little surprise when he came in and realized that I was the matte painting department. And there wasn't anyone else here. But he was wonderful with that. He really took me under his wing as a true mentor and would give me art history lessons, would bring in old oil and glass matte paintings, would show me old techniques. And it was a really special time to get to learn from him. Yeah, it sounds like he was kind of your creative surrogate father for a while. Definitely. I've been blessed to have a few of those in my career. Obviously, this was your destiny. You've gone down this path. You've hit all the right things at the right time. So you're at Zoic, you've worked with Digital Domain and Sony, ImageWorks, The Mill, all these top-level, high-end studios very early on in your career, which obviously set you up to be in business for yourself. Tell me how that played out for you after Zoic, where your journey started to continue on. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of moving for a couple of years. After Zoic, I went to Stargate Digital and met another amazing mentor, Cedric Tomacruz. At the same time, I was working for PlayStation, so I would do my days at Stargate and my nights at PlayStation. Went back to Zoic as a lead matte painter about a year later. Got to start to manage teams and learn what that was about. Went to Sony ImageWorks and tried out animation. Was on Hotel Transylvania, and I wanted to see what the animation world was about. Did a bunch of commercials, NPC, The Mill, PsyOp, kind of jumping around those to see, hey, what's this commercial world? Digital Domain was one of my favorite studios, and did quite a few films with them, quite a few films with NPC. So really just kind of jumping around, and usually 2 to 3 jobs at a time, just because I was so grateful to get to do it every day. Grateful that people were going to pay me to paint, and so excited about the types of projects that I was able to work on that I wanted more and more and more. Is there creativity in your family, your mother or father? Are they any way immersed in the creative world, or you just kind of sprung out of this, whatever, this inspiration?
that you got from The Matrix.
No, I joke that I was born into this, that if I had been a doctor or a lawyer, I would have been a disappointment to my family. Both my parents are makeup effects artists in the film industry. My grandparents were artists on both sides. I come from a lineage of artists and grew up in the film industry. I think the difference for me was, I was raised in the era of the computer, and so that was really my calling of how do we combine art and technology together, and visual effects and video games are kind of the perfect place to join those two things.